Saul took 3,000 picked men from all Israel, and he went in search of David and his men in the direction of the wild goat crags. When he came to the sheepfolds along the way, he found a cave, which he entered in to relieve himself. David and his men were occupying the innermost recesses of the cave. David's servant said to him, "This is the day of which the Lord said to you, I will deliver your enemy into your grasp. So do with him as you see fit." So David moved up and stealthily cut off an end of Saul's mantle. Afterward, however, David regretted that he had cut off an end of Saul's mantle. And he said to his men, "The Lord forbid that I should do such a thing to my master. The Lord's anointed, as he lay him at my hand. For he is the Lord's anointed." With these words, David restrained his men and would not permit them to attack Saul. Saul then left the cave and went on his way. David also stepped out of the cave, calling to Saul, "My lord, the king." When Saul looked back, David bowed to the ground in homage and asked Saul, "Why do you listen to those who say, 'David is trying to harm you'? You see for yourself today that the Lord just now delivered you into my grasp in the cave. I had some thought of killing you, but I took pity on you instead. I decided I will not raise a hand against my Lord, for he is the Lord's anointed and a father to me. Look here at the end of your mantle which I hold. Since I cut off an end of your mantle and did not kill you, see and be convinced that I plan no harm and no rebellion. Though you are hunting me down to take my life, the Lord will judge between me and you, and the Lord will exact justice from you in my case. I shall not touch you." The old proverb says, "From the wicked comes forth wickedness. So I will take no action against you. Against whom are you on campaign, O King of Israel? Whom are you pursuing? A dead dog or a single flea? The Lord will be the judge. He will decide between you and me. May he see this and take my part, and may he grant me justice beyond your reach." When David finished saying these things to Saul, Saul answered, "Is that your voice, my son David?" And Saul wept aloud. Saul then said to David, "You are in the right. rather than I. You have treated me generously while I have done you harm. Great is the generosity you've showed me today. When the Lord delivered me into your grasp, you did not kill me. For if a man meets his enemy, does he send him away unharmed? May the Lord reward you generously for what you have done this day. And now I know that you shall surely be king, and that sovereignty over Israel shall come into your possession. That was the first reading from the book of 1 Samuel 24, 3 through 21. That was the reading of January the 21st. If you want to check out that reading, I'll put it in the description area. A few things stood out to me here. So I do these daily readings every single day. These are readings from Scripture. And I do them as a part of my spiritual practice to become a more effective strongman, to become stronger mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So I do this every morning, and I write some reflection. And so there's a couple of things that stood out to me here between that exchange between Saul and David, right? So a little background, a little context is, Saul is the king of Israel, and God sends out Samuel to find David, right? Samuel doesn't even know that it's David. And Samuel is one of the prophets of God. And so Samuel doesn't even really know who this new king will be, right? So he sends him out to Jesse, who is the father of David. He's got several sons. And eventually God has Jesse bring David. And that's eventually when, Samuel anoints David that he would be the king. And so Saul sees all of this, all this going on. He sees all the love and everything that, all the attention, if you will, that is coming to David. And he becomes enraged. He becomes very jealous, and over time he seeks to just kill David. And that's kind of like where we open today. He went out on a campaign, and he took 3,000 of his best men to search for David and to kill him. And so there's this, and then, there's a couple of readings a couple days back where God tells David, hey, look, don't worry. I will put your enemy I will bring him to your hand, and you can do whatever you want with him. But David doesn't, right? Instead, he has mercy on David. And the one thing that stood out to me was when Saul wept aloud and he said, you are in the right rather than I. You have treated me generously while I have done you harm. Right, so I think there's so much to glean here. One thing that really stood out to me was Saul recognizes he is in the wrong, and he apologizes. And so as I go through these readings every single day, I read them. I take some time to reflect and write my thoughts, but then I'm always trying to discern, well, what's the message that God has for me today? How can I apply these to my life? And so I ask myself, have I apologized when I was wrong against my brother? Right? And when I say my brother, that can be literally my fraternal brother. But my brother is also my fellow man. People that I know, right? Men that I know, men that I have encountered. And I think we can all relate to that, right? We can all kind of ask ourselves that question, right? Do we allow our ego to get in the way? Right? Because our ego is designed to keep us safe. maybe we don't want to put ourselves out there because it will appear weak if we go and apologize, if we admit that we're wrong. So that's something that was a big question for me was, have I apologized when I was in the wrong against my brother? Have I at least sought out to make reparations with anybody, any man, fellow brother that I have wronged? Have I tried to open that line of communication? Have I tried? You know, it's funny because so many times we think that we're the one who's been wronged and that we're the ones that are in the right. I mean, look at Saul. He thought David was infringing on his sovereignty. And I think that's just so easy. That's our ego talking to us. Which, again, I always liked. If you haven't read that book, You Are Not Your Brain, you will learn and gather so many good nuggets from that book. It's essentially it's about your ego, your brain lying to you to keep you in a safe place, essentially, right? Because your brain is designed to keep you alive, keep you safe, avoid pain and seek pleasure, right? Those are the things that it's trying to do. And then the big leap is kind of tied into that by Gay Hendricks. He talks about how, once we reach our upper limit of the amount of happiness that we can handle, our ego kicks in, essentially, and we do something to self-sabotage that. And we begin to think that, you know what, I'm the one that's right. They're the ones that are wrong. They wronged me. And that's your ego really talking to you. And that's why it's always good to have someone on the outside, right? Maybe another friend, a relative to give you a different perspective, maybe. So anyway, that was my question to myself today. Because if you, again, remember I mentioned the ego, right? Leading up to that, Saul allowed himself to be coerced into thinking David wanted to bring him harm. His ego. Because he didn't want to lose his kingdom, right? Which would what? He would lose his sovereignty, he would lose his safety, et cetera, right? And I think we all suffer and struggle with that. If I admit that I was wrong to my wife, to my fellow man, I'm weak. I'm giving over my strength. I'm giving over my sovereignty. When these are all just lies. This is your brain lying to you. And so I ask myself, how many times have I allowed my ego to do this to me? And so it's just as I look further into this message, I feel that the Lord is trying to impart on me here is mercy, right? Because God is a merciful God. So if God is a merciful God and He forgives me on a daily basis for all for my wretchedness, then I too am to have mercy on those who've done me wrong. Well, I think, what was it? Christ said you were to forgive them 7 times 77, which is essentially unlimited times, infinity. And that's tough today. That is a tough thing in today's climate, right? With, quote unquote enemies. That is a tough thing. With everything that's going on in the world, it's tough to do that. And the real thing, the truth is, we are not living anything new today. We have been killing each other for centuries. Seeking to do harm to our brother, all the way back to Cain and Abel. When Cain killed Abel. It goes all the way back. So today, it's nothing new today. Just how we kill each other is more advanced. What's sad is today, we're still killing ourselves, literally killing ourselves, taking our own lives. My cousin did that. Emily's husband did that. He took hers and his life. Because we allow our ego to get in the way. Our ego and brain feeds us information that majority of the time in reality is not true. And so the second thing that stood out to me there, what Saul said, he said, "May the Lord reward you generously for what you have done this day. And now I know that you surely will be king, and that sovereignty over Israel shall come into your possession." And so as I'm reflecting on that, I'm looking at that as, man, may the Lord reward me for having mercy on those who've done me wrong. You know, one thing I always thought this was a fault. Maybe this is just the way God made me. I don't know. But I don't know. I've never really held a grudge with people. If someone wronged me for whatever reason, like I've never really held it against them. Like if they come back and they want to talk or whatever, like I've always just been open to that. I've never been like, man, screw you. You disrespected me. Like I don't know. I've forgiven people, I guess, to a fault, but I don't know. Maybe it's not a fault. Maybe that's just the way God made me. And not intentionally, not like, oh, I'm doing this because I want God to have mercy on me. And no, I don't know. I've just kind of naturally done that. Even one of my close friends, Jimmy, shout out to Jimmy. He's like, brother, you forgive people too easy. But I've never really held a grudge, like I said, almost to a fault. But again, maybe this is just the way God made me. As I'm looking at this, what Saul says, and I'm really taking in Saul's words, sovereignty will be mine from the Lord as a result of me loving my enemies and admitting also when I was wrong and having mercy on them, on anyone that did me wrong. But most importantly there is admitting when I was wrong. This is something I'll do from time to time with my kids. Like if the other day, like my daughter, or my son, I'll give you an example. So you can see my little guy here just running around like crazy, right? And there was one time I had my camera set up, and I'm doing my thing here. I'm putting together my videos, and sometimes he'll go and he'll if you've been keeping up with this series of videos, every now and then you'll see a little hand wave in front of the camera. That's him. He's 6, and I always have to tell him, dude, get away from the camera, just stay away from it, kind of thing. Well, one day during one of these doing one of these recordings, I finished doing a lift, and as I started walking, I was walking in the vicinity of one of the cameras, and it was on the ground, and he's running around, kicking his ball around, and I'm like, dude, and I kind of snapped at him because it was on the floor, and the camera was pointed at, the camera, like he stood the camera back up, but the camera was pointing in another direction. So basically it didn't even really record my set. And I kind of snapped at him, and I raised my voice at him. I said, dude, and I called him over. I said, dude, I told you not to do this. I told I came down on him a little bit. And he was, still kind of on the other side of the gym. He goes, Daddy, but it fell down. It fell down, and I just picked it up for you. Oh, dude, that hit me in the gut. I was like, dude, what a dick. I didn't even ask him. I just snapped at him. Verbally sought to do him harm, when in reality that wasn't the case. So I called him over. I called him over, and I pulled him close to me, and I had him look me in the eyes, and I said, son, I didn't know that it fell over. I apologize. And he was just like, okay. And I said, no, look at me. I had him look me in the eyes, and I had to tell him 3 things that most men can't overcome their ego to do. And I had to tell him these 3 words. I was wrong. Thank you for picking up my camera and trying to fix it and put it back the way it was. Man, the look on his face was priceless. He had this look of relief, joy, happiness. How many men are seeking approval from their fathers and it's not there? How many men would want their father to say, I'm sorry, I was wrong for what I've done, right? Because we all have our own sins. We have our own wretchedness that we deal with as men, but we don't have that example of someone to show us how to apologize and how to admit we're wrong. And so that's it, man. That's what I wanted to share with you today. This was a reading from the other day, and when I read it, I was just like, oh, dude, this is like gold right here. This is how you become a strong man. Not just strong physically, but strong mentally, emotionally, especially spiritually. And so it's just something I want to share with you today. I'll put the link in the comments if you want to check it out for yourself. There's also a gospel reading that kind of ties into a little bit. There's a psalm and a gospel reading that ties into it if you want to check that out. But that's pretty much it, man. Today, as you can see, my first day of really lifting with straps. So the last several days, last couple of weeks really, I've been noticing I can get into a much better position when I'm training with a double overhand. I would warm up with double overhand pulls. I would work my weak is so freaking my grip is so weak, it's ridiculous in terms of like the deadlift. Like my grip is strong when I'm doing jiu-jitsu, but when I'm pulling that barbell, and my grip is strong when I'm moving kettlebells around, but for the barbell, man, I can't keep that thing rolling out of my hands for the life of me. I can work up to about 150 kilos, and then it starts wanting to roll out of my hands. And so what I'll do is I'll start my lighter sets, and I'll work up to that 150 kilo ish range. And then, but when I noticed when I would warm up that way, man, I was locked in. Like the wedge was just, dude, like the posture, the positioning, all that was solid. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to test out like some lifting straps just to kind of see what happens. And so, dude, today's pulls faster, position solid, which is kind of good timing because tomorrow I'm going to be going through my first max session to see what this is the result. This is what I've been kind of working towards for the last 30 days. Tomorrow's the day I go for my first max. And it's not going to be a PR because my ultimate, my personal best is 290 kilos. So I won't be pulling anywhere near that. But my estimated max going into this, just because I hadn't deadlifted in, really over a year, anything intentional, was around like 230 kilos, like 507, 505. And so now we're going to get tested out, see what's happened. See what's happened in the last 30 days. And also, as you can see, I skipped right to day 29 just because I was throwing my notes off because somehow day 18, the footage that I recorded was like something happened to it. It was damaged, and I lost all the footage for that day. So these last several sessions, it was like day 20, but it was actually day 21 footage. So I just decided, just skip a day. So if you're following this series and you notice it jumps from like 28 to 29, or like there's not an episode missing, just day 18 got lost, right? It got corrupt. The video footage got corrupted somehow in the process of me trying to transfer it to my hard drive. So tomorrow is my first max attempt since this 30 days of deadlifting. And dude, I feel great. I feel solid. Going to be interesting to see how this turns out with the straps. But that's all I got, man. I appreciate you watching. And I encourage you to take a moment to reflect on what I shared today and ask yourself, where have I been wrong but allowed my ego to get in the way and not apologized? So that's all I got, man. Appreciate you watching. See you tomorrow. Peace.